Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. I am your host, Chuck Marting, and this week we have a very special guest, Larry Milligan. Larry and I have been friends for, I was thinking about this the other day, Larry. We've been friends for over 20 years, dude.
Yeah, I thought about that. Somebody asked me, we were talking about this. They asked me when I met you, and I started to say Thornton Middle School, but you and I met before then. We were at York Middle School together. And so I was like, well, it's been a long time.
It's
I
been
said,
a while.
he was working at the very, very, very first teaching job I ever had in education. So that's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. So it's been great. Larry has a very unique perspective on leadership, and I've been wanting to get him on for a while. And that is because he was not only and still a coach, but he's also been an administrator, school administrator, and been able to have that perspective. And I can tell you right now, having worked with him in the schools when I was in law enforcement, dealing with middle school kids is a challenge in and of itself. And so there's a lot of different perspectives. And so I feel that today's episode of The Language of Leadership is going to be great, having those perspectives and being able to key in on the things that have helped Larry be successful in both those endeavors. So I'm going to let Larry give a little bit of introduction and his background and stuff. But Larry, great to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for letting me be on. It's an honor to be a part of this, and the world needs more leaders. And I'm not going to say like myself, because that's not in any way, shape, or form what I mean. But leaders are out there, and we need them to be leading in the right direction. And it's one of those things. I grew up in Southern Oklahoma on a farm, a little ranch thing, and so I've had. I grew up in Oklahoma my entire life, moved to Colorado right before I met you. Actually, I lived in Colorado about 5 years before I met you. So I moved in the mid 90s and got married and have four children out there. And uh, it's been I've got a job now. I came back to Oklahoma in 2014 as an administrator. I got an administration job here, and it's brought me back home, and I got to keep doing a lot of the same. Did coach baseball. I've been a baseball coach for the last 25 years. I've stopped doing that once my kids all got out of school, but 25 years of coaching and a lot of success and a lot of state championships for all of my kids. I have four children. I own a and I say I do this. That's really unfair to say that, but I have a distinction that I have four children that have all four won state championships, and all four have made all state in their respective sports, and in baseball and softball, and at four different schools. So it's been one of those situations where usually you get a kid like, for example, my oldest one graduated from Cherry Creek High School there in Colorado. So the tradition, everybody thinks they all went to Cherry Creek, and they didn't. They went to different schools and won their state championships, and they're all individually different. And it's been baseball's been a blessing to me. It's been a blessing to my family. It's been uh, a thing that has been one of the best things that been a part of my life. Mark Johnson, who is the baseball coach at Cherry Creek High School, one of the greatest leaders, and I learned a lot of things from him, and a lot of the things that I instill on a baseball field, a lot of things that really molded me as the leader I was on the baseball field came through him. He is a phenomenal man, selfless man. He could care less if anybody in the world knew who he is. It means a lot more to him that people know who Cherry Creek is and who those kids are than ever means that knows who he is. And that, to me, that's what it is. Being a leader, um, you have to have that trust in the people around you.
Yeah.
If somebody around you, when I was working not as a coach or as an administrator, but in my other jobs that I've worked at UPS and Frontier Airlines and different things like that, if you're not willing to work beside them, I used to tell my crew, they always say, I'm working for you today. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're working with me today. And it's, and that's what it is. Um, a great high school principal doesn't sit behind his desk. He's walking the hallways. He's talking to kids. He's talking to teachers. A great teacher doesn't sit behind her desk or his desk. They're standing up, walking around the classroom, talking to the kids. To me, being a part of their lives and being a part of who they are and being a part of their, knowing who your employees are, knowing who your uh, students are, knowing who your teams are, things of that nature. That to me, if you don't have that, it's tough to be a leader. It's really tough.
Larry, there's something that popped into my mind as you're talking, and I think this is an excellent question for you. And I um, when I think about this, and that is, how can a leader know their purpose? Because it's very evident when having worked with you and knowing you, you knew exactly what your purpose was. And I know when you have purpose, it motivates you and it keeps you going, and it's what drives you. So
Yeah.
how do you figure out what that purpose is?
I think through a lot of trial and error is a lot of big things. I mean, a great example, um, and I'll use two different examples. The school that I'm at currently is very, very successful in state. But as a matter of fact, they're playing for their seventh state basketball championship in the last 9 years tonight,
Wow.
today. And so
Wow.
they're very successful. Their coach has those expectations. I'm going to go back, and I know this is going to be something dear to your heart. Do you remember the movie Miracle, where Herb Brooks says they're like, hey, you're wanting to beat the Russians? I think it's kind of a lofty goal. Because yeah, that's why I want to do it. I mean, don't set go. People always say, "Oh, don't set your goals too high; you'll never attain them." If you don't set them high, you have no shot at being there. So try to do the way, push yourself to be better than you ever thought you could possibly be, and you might get there. I tell people all the time, you're never going to hit a pitch you don't swing at. I mean, I don't ever yell at a kid. Not once have I ever yelled at a kid. This since I'm in, I may yell at myself or turn around and say something like, "Don't swing at that." But I don't say to them, "What are you doing? Why are you not?" Why? If I had a kid. We had a ball game one time, and I never will forget it. I was coaching at Random High School there in Denver, and 3-2 count, bases loaded, tie ball game, a walk. Walks it off. We win the ball game because it was load bases. It was bases were loaded, and he swings and misses. Ball four. I mean, ball's up over his head. And he comes over and he's like shaking his head. He's like, "Sorry, coach." I said, "Well, man, just think how far it had gone if you'd hit it." I mean, because you can't take the effort away from these kids. You can't take that effort away from the people. And when you hire a guy, somebody made a comment one time. He's like, I just want to work. We hired a teacher who had been a principal, and his first comment to me was, "I don't want your job. I can just tell you right now, I don't want your job." And I told him, I said, "You should want my job." I said, "I want you to work like you want my job. I want you to push yourself to take my job, because if you do, that makes me work harder to keep it." And I said that it's one of those situations where you look at the big picture, and so many people nowadays in our world look at the small picture. They don't look at the big picture. They look at a
Exactly.
situation that happens in Oklahoma City or Denver or whatever, and they don't take in consideration the effect it's having on the world. And it's we've got to make a lot of changes in our world, because some of our leadership is, I don't know if they're in that capacity. I mean, we're not going the right direction in our world, and that's not in Oklahoma, and that's not in Denver. It's in everywhere. It's not, it's not California. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a world thing, and we gotta figure that out. So
Yeah, we do. And that's it's an incredible thing to see. And I've seen through leadership people that have just been put into a position because it was assumed, because they were such a good team member, that they're going to be an excellent leader. And we plug them in there, but then we set them up for failure because we don't
absolutely.
teach them how to be a leader. So how does a leader inspire action? I've witnessed you do this with kids that you were coaching. I've seen you do it as an administrator, and you're very good at this. And I think there's um, things that you were dialing in on. So, as a leader, how would you inspire action for a team? What did you do to get people to do the things that you needed them to do, and have
I
it be
think
their
I,
idea?
I think one of the biggest things was I gave them that rope. I gave them that ownership to, hey, let's, when you are a part of a team and you're going to lead this group, everybody has to do their part. And so making them understand that you're as important or more important than I am. I tell kids all the time when I coach, I can show you, I can give you all the pieces of the puzzle, but if you don't put it together, we're not gonna win. It's not gonna be successful. If we don't do, baseball's a tough job because it's nine different guys doing nine jobs, and if one guy don't do his job, we don't win. And I tell
Mhm.
people, no one person has ever won a team state title. Never. I mean, in the history of the world of athletics, no one person has won a team state title because it takes everybody. And I think one of the biggest things that you do is nowadays people say, here's your job, go do this, without going with them and saying, let me do your job and show you what we're going to be doing on this, and this is what I expect from you. I talked to a guy the other day. We were talking about training some people to do a job. He's like, nobody knows what they're doing. I said, have they been taught to do what they're supposed to be doing? And well, they know how to do that. I said, but if they don't, the biggest thing is you may be able to do the job, but not the way your company or your boss or your coach wants you to do it. So there's a difference in doing the job and knowing how to do the job. Because if I have you do something, Chuck, and I know you've been a police officer, if I went to work for you tomorrow doing the stuff that you do, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I probably could wing my way through it, and then you'd say, hang on, you're not doing it right. Well, if the job is done, it was right. No, it doesn't mean it's right just because I got to complete it. So trying to make sure, and I think one of the biggest things, I go back to it, and I do this a lot, and I'll tie it into something else. Know who you have that you're working with. You become a better leader by knowing them. And I'll give you a great example, and we'll go back to the movie because it's one of my favorites. Anytime I get depressed and frustrated, I watch the movie Miracle. You guys will figure that out before we're done here. And in the one situation where Rob McClanahan gets hurt, and he's sitting down there, and the doc said, "I can't play." He goes, "Oh yeah, you're bruised. It's a long way from your heart." And he calls him a name and makes him mad. And the kid, "I want you to be a hockey player. I am a hockey player." They get into a yell, and he walks up and goes, "That'll get them going." And it's kind of a move that was part that people kind of laugh about. But had he not known Rob McClanahan, and had he not known how he would react to what he did for the positive of the team, he wouldn't have done that. You didn't see him yelling at Jim Craig that way, or one of the other guys. Um, Everything you do is for a purpose. If you watch that show, and at one time Craig Patrick, his assistant, questioned him. He's like, I don't think you push him this hard. And he says, I made him take that test? So I knew I could push him this hard. He knew who they were before they started. I don't need the best players. I need the right ones. You don't need the best team all the time. You need the right people.
Mm, yeah.
Some guy who is a multi-billion-dollar winner in this company, and you hire him because he's going to make our company better. It may not fit. It doesn't. That's not a guarantee. You have to have the right people for what you're doing.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, you're molding everybody to be that right person. You're going into them and telling them, listen, I think the biggest thing that teachers lack nowadays, and it's not every teacher. So please understand, I'm not blanketing the whole educational system. I'm not, or coaches or anything else. One thing Mark Johnson taught me, and it's a phrase that I used every year I ever coached baseball. I know where I'm going to be next year. Let's see where we can get you. And kids already knew right then, this guy's doing it for me. He's trying to figure out how he can get me to college or to pro or to wherever. And I know where I'm going to be. Let's see what I can do for you. Let's see what we can get done. You go do your part, and I'll take care of everything else. And kids will do anything for you. I mean, it's a scenario where when they believe in you and they know you believe in them, that's one of the best things there is.
Well,
And
and
when you made the comment about our life together at Thornton Middle School, we took some kids that were, pretty ornery, and I still get messages from some of them today. Their parents themselves, which is a scary thought
yeah.
that some of those kids are parents, but they are, and I still talk to a lot of them because of the impact they had on my life, and and I hope to have on theirs.
Larry, you had one thing that I really want to get your perspective on that you taught me, and I don't even know if you know this or not, but it's the number one principle that I've lived by um, towards the end of my career when I realized what it was as an entrepreneur, as a coach myself with coaching leaders and business people and teaching leaders like I'm doing now with you. And that is taking 100% accountability for your actions and what you do. Now, the reason why I mention that with you is we worked really close together. Me as a law enforcement officer in the school, you as an administrator with these kids, and seeing how you approach that topic with kids or even with adults when we had to was very inspiring for me, just to sit back and watch. So talk to me about 100% accountability and why that's not only important for a leader but for a team as well.
I think one of the biggest things that and I'll go use the scenario. I remember some of the scenarios we dealt with parents. We had a parent one time that was we were disciplining their child and came up and was furious. I mean, they were wanted to. I mean, that way thought they were going to have to call the cops. We ever have to yelling, "Hey, you come over. We got a parent that's pretty irate." But before they walked out of the office, they realized we're not against their kid. We're just for making him do what we need him to do and be successful inside our scope of things, inside of our building. There are rules in this building. We don't walk into your house and tell you how to raise your kids. Don't come in here and tell us how to run our building. And I think one of the biggest things is, and this is kind of goes along, and I trust me, I'm honored that you said that about impacting the way you do things, but you have to be accountable. One of the biggest problems in the world is it's everybody else's fault. In kids nowadays, there's a running joke in the coaching world right now that says players win, coaches lose.
Mm.
Okay, but it's that's the way it is. As soon as the game loses against a team that's could be 20 points better, they want to fire the coach. Why? I mean, you win a ball game the first night and then you get beat the next day and they want to fire the coach. Well, hey, you didn't want to fire him yesterday when you won. He's the same guy. He did the same things. And in the world, in life, you're going to have situations where you're going to be the second guy. You're not going to win. You're not going to get picked for everything. You're not going to be successful. But do everything you can do and do it right. And there's nothing to hang your head about. I mean, I go back to there are so many people, parents included, and I'll say this: when we were in school, when we grew up, and I know very little about your youth, but I know you well enough to know how you were raised. I didn't care that the teachers were going to paddle me or yell at me or scream at me. I didn't want them to call my dad. I knew what was going to happen if they called my dad. And today it's not that way. And I'm not saying that I'm not blaming. I mean, it is that way in some places, but I see a lot of things where our dynamics of our leadership have changed because it's somebody else's fault. When I say leadership, I'm going in the family, I'm going into different things like this. It's always the teacher's fault that I failed. I didn't do really good on this test because the teacher didn't give me enough notes or I didn't get enough time to study. I didn't it's always the teacher's fault I failed. It doesn't matter that I didn't study. I didn't do my part. If we have a team project and there's four of us and two of them don't do their problem, you're going to get 50% at best.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not my fault. I didn't do my part, but our team got a 50. Well, you do your part. And I think the biggest thing in everything is, and you do very good job at this, and it goes into your law enforcement background too. Trust who you're working with and give them everything and expect everything back from them. And I would tell you this: I wouldn't expect you to give me 100% of your focus and your job and your hard work if I wasn't willing to give it back to you. And that's the big. We want someone to do the job rather than help them do the job. And
Makes a lot of sense.
I really believe that there's so many things right now that people know. And this is one of my things. People know how to be a leader. People know how to do things right. I think people are scared to step out on that limb sometimes. And I have a huge sense of humor. So I've been wrong my whole life. I don't care. I'm short. I'm fat now. I mean, I don't care. You can, kids will laugh at me and I'll tell them all the time, I can't do it. Just because you can doesn't mean I can run that fast or I can do this or that. I always have a great relationship with them, but it goes back to when you put your team together, kind of like Herb Brooks put the Olympic team together. He knew who they were. He knew who Jim Craig was before he put him in that net. When Craig Patrick makes the comment, well, his game seems kind of off because you ever seen when his game was on? He knew what he was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't there, and he wasn't getting it from him. But he gave him that confidence. He gave him you're that guy. You're the guy in the net. You're the one. And once again, I'm going to relate to this movie, but Jim Craig didn't want to take the test because they thought it was stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And Herb said, are you mad at me because I wouldn't take the test? He goes, no, I want to see that guy that wouldn't take the test. So he knew who he had. He just had to get him to believe who he was.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the things. You have kids. We had kids at that school, and you and I've talked about this a lot at the time. We've talked about it even in the past few years. We had kids that had no shot. They walked in that building as fifth, sixth, seventh graders, and they had no shot in life. But we gave them help to get those choices. Todd Riley was phenomenal at getting kids to understand there's other doors. You don't have to walk through that door all the time. Go through this one and see what happens in this world. Go through, we have a girl that went to school there, and I don't know what her last name is now. Her name was Suhei. And I still talk to her family every once in a while. She has two kids now.
Wow.
She was like on an island in the eighth grade. She had no idea how to get off. And all we gave her was the tools to become a good parent, become a good person. And it wasn't to be a Rhodes Scholar. It wasn't to be the greatest athlete in the world. It was to be a good person. We gave her the caring that teachers gave gave kids or should give kids to say, hey, you got a problem, call me. I mean, she came and talked to me about situations she's dealing with her family, with her mom, and I learned a lot about her simply because of getting to know people and getting to know her. She was failing my class, and I brought her in. Didn't realize that she was basically raising her two sisters because her mom had a night job, and she was putting them to bed, getting them up in the morning, getting them off to school. Mom worked all night long, slept during the day. She's an eighth grader. Chuck, I don't do that to my kids now, and I'm 56. I mean, this girl's in the eighth grade and raising two kids, and they're her brother and sister. But you have to know people and understand. When we figured that out about her, everything changed.
Didn't it?
We went from trying to make her be passing the class to say, hey, turn it in. Let's give some effort. And we're going to help you through everything. And you don't have to be. And here's, I joke with this all the time. C's get degrees. If you have a C in class and you're a C student, don't come argue with the teacher because you got a C, because that's who you are. Know who you are and be who you are. And there are people out there that when you start believing and you get kids to believe in themselves, you never know what they can accomplish. I mean, you have no idea what you can accomplish when you get people to believe in themselves.
And it's amazing that you say that, because there's been many times when I have spoken to leaders, and I'm sure you've probably heard this too. And I know this is something that we emphasized with a lot of administrators, a lot of teachers and things like that, is the impact that you have on an adult, a kid in most cases where we were at, that the one thing that you say to them can change their life for the good or the worst. I've had kids that come and said that, a teacher told them, you might as well settle for this because you're not going to be any better than this. But then I've seen people like what you were just talking about, where you see that kid, you see the potential that they don't see right now. It's very hard to see what's going around you. And one of the favorite things that I was taught, and one of the things I say all the time is it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle.
Yeah.
You're seeing what I'm not seeing.
Yes.
And as a leader, when you recognize that and you understand that, the power or the ability of words will have the impact that they'll have can change everything. And so, as a leader, what I've seen is if you know how, like you were talking about before with a coach from Miracle, if you know how to tap into that person, what makes them tick, but you have to take the time to figure it out.
Absolutely.
You have to show that person you care about them, and then you're able to build them up and get them to where you want, they can be. How how have you found the best way to help people recognize that, especially adults? That seems to me to be the hardest thing because they've gone through life having people tell them you're no good, whether it's their spouse, whether it's a previous place that they worked, where you may have them now and you say something to them and you see their demeanor change like that because all of a sudden they've gone back to what happened before. Here we go down the same road again. I thought I just left that. How do you repair or even fix that or help somebody?
I think one of the biggest things that I do, and it goes back to, and I've mentioned this a lot, is getting to get to know them, talk to them, and I put myself a lot of times, even at kids. I'll talk to kids and I don't have a girlfriend. Like, dude, I didn't have a girlfriend until I was in high school. I mean, I was short and stupid, and I was, and they have to see you as one of them as a person. And when they start seeing, I talk to a lot of people, students, and people. I'll joke with the kid and mess with him, and he'll be laughing, and somebody will say, "Is that your one of your dad's friends?" Or he goes, "Oh, that's my principal," and they're like, "Wow, your principal talks to you like that? Jokes with you?" And my principal, and that's who I am. When I work with people, you see these. There's a lot of people that you don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what their day was like. And so I start every day off with good morning. I talk to all the kids, and every time I see a kid, I was, "Hey, how was your night? Get some good rest last night?" "No, I was up studying." I said, "I understand." And just, if kids will understand that you're human, you're not this machine that's the head guy. I go back to big companies, huge companies that are worldwide. When the big guy comes and meets the employees and just says hi to them, that should be something that's, I've worked for places where, um, oh man, the so and so's here, the big boss is here today. Well, that shouldn't change what your job is. When I evaluated teachers, I didn't tell them when I was coming. I didn't set up an evaluation at this hour, at this time I'm going to be in your class, because I don't want a dog and pony show. I want to see what you do every day. When I go in and watch the teacher, I watch the kids. I never even listen to what she said or he said. Because if your kids are engaged in what you're doing, or your employees are engaged in what you're doing, they're going to get it. I don't care that I know what you should know what you're doing, or you would be a teacher.
Yeah.
So I want to see how you're getting across to them. And most of my reports, even to the negative reports I've ever done for a teacher in 20 years as an administrator, it was because of kid engagement. This kid wasn't paying attention. Why do we not stop and just make sure he was paying attention? And you did correct him a couple times to sit down or be quiet or whatever, but make sure he's engaged. Once you have to do that, make sure he's engaged with you and understanding what you're doing. I'm also a firm believer, and you and I were together about the time this all started to happen, when the Colorado CSAT test came out, where the big test. Well, they were grading kids on their writing. They were scoring you against me. Well, if you and I were walked in there and the writing thing was about, give me the technical strategies of the breaking down a door for a police academy, you're going to be better than I am. I mean, you've done this before, so it's unfair for them to, I'm not a big one of those generalized tests or, standardized test guys because tell me what you know. I want to know you. I don't want everybody to take the same test. And now we see, okay, this guy's not very smart. No, he just doesn't know that. But everybody has something.
Yeah.
Everybody has something. You know, I was decent in math. I'm a subtract multiplying divide guy, but I'm terrible in English. I mean, I don't. I'm not good at all. But it's one of those deals that, and you have to find what they have and blossom it, pour water over that thing, you know, make it huge. It's one of those things, and it's something that's got to get us back to where we need to be as a world, is leaders utilizing what somebody does well,
Yeah.
and not here like you hit the nail on the head a while ago. What we used to do, we saw a kid, and rather than saying you're never going to make it in math, we told him, man, look how good you could be in science. They forgot about how bad their math scores were. Now they're thinking about how good they could do in science. And it's one of those deals that I truly believe with everything I've got that everybody, God put everybody here for a purpose. Everybody has something that they can give to everybody else and make everybody else better. Figure out what that is and utilize
Well, and I just thought of this when you were talking, and I had to look it up because I didn't want to misquote. But Mark Cuban, that guy is incredible with some of the thoughts and things that he comes out with. And there was a quote that he said that I had wrote down, and the quote says, say that he was talking about the biggest communication problem. He said that the biggest communication problem is we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply.
it. Yes. Yes.
How true is that?
I've had numerous conversations where people will say, I don't want you to I don't want to talk to you. I want you to hear me. And it took me for a long time. It took me a long time to understand that, Chuck, because naturally I'm a talker. So I'm going to talk. So you start talking, I'm going to talk right back. But my daughter, actually, who's the youngest of my four kids, actually taught me a lot of times. She's like, Dad, there are times I don't care what your answer is, because Dad wants to fix things. Dad wants to fix things for his baby girl, no matter what it is. She'll come in frustrated from a test or whatever, and she's upset. And so I'll start telling her how we're going to fix it. She's like, Dad, I don't need to fix it. I just want you to listen. Just shut up and listen. And that's exactly true. People, when you call me and say, yeah, I just need to talk to you about something, and you start talking, you don't need me to fix it. Just, but guys are fixers. People are fixers. People in this world, I want to fix it. I want to fix the problem for you. No, just hear what the problem is. Listen to me, and we'll go from there. We'll work on what it is later, but I just want to get it off my chest right now, type of thing. And you're right. People in the world today, they don't just listen to listen anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of incredible to me when you start learning that kind of stuff, and how, if you do just what you said, if you just sit and tentatively listen and acknowledge that person, 9 times out of 10, that's all they want.
Yeah,
And if you
changes
listen
everything.
to them, they know how to fix their problem,
Hmm.
and they'll tell you, and then you can point it out, but you
Yeah,
got to listen first.
and I think one of the things too is, and what you just said, listen to them. Don't listen trying to figure out the problem. Just listen to them. It'll all come to you.
Yeah,
And a lot of, like you said, a lot of times they know the solution to the problem. They
yeah,
know everything about the problem, but it's a scenario where, once again, as we've talked about, it's the world we live in now. Things have changed so much. I mean, I remember growing up, and I know you the same thing. When my dad talked, nobody talked. I mean, there wasn't any comments back. It was a one-way conversation. He talked, we just went and did what was said, and my dad would say things. At what point did we ever start negotiating? So, and it's one of those deals where, the thing is we have there are so many people out there that have so many things to offer. I mean, I really truly believe that everybody out there, um, you look. I'll even go. This sounds really weird to say this, but driving a road when you drive on highways anywhere from Oklahoma to Colorado, there's road construction. I promise you. I don't know where it is this month, but I promise you, there's road construction somewhere
Somewhere.
because it's everywhere. That guy holding the sign as important as that guy driving the guy putting the new tar down because everybody has a job. And if that guy's not there holding the sign to slow people down, look at what could happen. Look at the negative. If they don't put up those cones, look what happens. And people say, oh, I'm just the guy holding the sign. You're as important as that guy driving, putting the road down. Because if you don't hold that sign, he may get killed. I mean, there's so many people look at themselves, and you have to get them to look at themselves as being the leader. You can be me. You can be the guy up here because if you don't believe that, you won't do your job well. And I, people look at their job as, well, I don't, I'm not important because I play right field, or I'm not important because I never get to shoot the basketball, or I don't know, I'm not important because, I'm just the water boy. Water boy. How many people thought that guy was really important when Damar Hamlin went down and he came over and gave CPR right away like that? How important was he before that happened? Now he's
Yeah.
one of the most famous guys around
Yeah.
because he saved that guy's life. But before that happened, he was just another guy. No one really knew who he was. And at some point in everyone's lives, it's going to come out that you're going to be called on to do something out of your comfort zone, but it's going to push you to be who you really are.
Yeah. We've been talking about a bunch of things, and I want to take you to a point in here where um, books and training and things like that. I'm a big reader, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently reading a book right now that I got to ask you a question, and I don't know if you even know about this book, but I bet you know who David L. Cook is.
Mm-hmm.
He's a famous coach and very inspiring, motivating. He came out with a book called Greatness, and the big thing is it's $100 for his book. It's about 100-page book, and it's $100. So you're paying $1 a page for that thing. But I have learned so much so far in reading it about passion, about success, about how to channel those things. And there's other people like Ed Milet, um, Tim Grover, guys like that in my feeling, you're right there with them, having seen you with your coaching and stuff. Like, I'm just waiting for your book to come out. There's a hint for you. Um, but I know that you and how passionate you were, still are, about coaching and stuff like that. You were continually trying to improve and do things. So I guess the next time when you're in Denver and we get together and we're talking and we have lunch and go have some barbecue, that's another story.
There you
But
go.
um, what would be the one book that you would look at me and say, Chuck, you've got to read this. This will help you with every aspect of what you're doing. It'll change the way you do things. What would that book be?
A lot of the books that I read are motivational type books, and I'm going to go back to the book right now called America's Coach that Herb Brooks wrote. It's about
Mm-hmm.
motivation. I'm a huge Herb Brooks fan. I think when Herb passed away, it killed a lot of things, and it's not because of success as the gold medal. It's the way he did things. To me, Herb Brooks would have been Herb Brooks if they'd have never won the '80 gold medal. I mean, that's to me. He changed those guys' lives forever, and um, one of the other I'm a huge baseball guy, as we talked about. Derek Jeter wrote a book called The Life I Imagine. It's a book about Derek Jeter's life I imagine. Derek Jeter at 5 years old told his mom and dad, I'm gonna be the Yankee shortstop. When I grow up, I'm gonna be the Yankee shortstop with 5 World Series rings. When he went to his junior senior prom, they said, what will you be in 10 years? And he says, I'll be the Yankee shortstop with 5 World Series rings. And in 10 years, he was the Yankee shortstop with 4 World Series rings at the time.
Wow.
He has 5 now, but he had 4 then. And it's a setting a goal because I guarantee how many people when you say I'm going to be the Yankee shortstop at 5 years old, how many times did mom and dad go, yeah, really, whatever. He was a Yankee fan because his grandmother was a Yankee fan. His mom and dad were not even really baseball fans. A lot of people don't know this. Derek Jeter did not sign. He got drafted out of high school to play pro baseball, but he had signed to play basketball at the University of Michigan, and so he was a big time basketball player. Um, I'm real big on goal setting and setting them where they're. I set your goals here. Don't be content to be where you are, and never. Um, I using what you just said a while ago. My son has a say, and he's a big reader. He reads a lot of these Tony Robbins and a lot of the money books and how to motivate yourselves. And every time we'll say something, no matter what it is, they could say, "Hey, we're going to buy a car, and it's $5,000, or we're going to buy a new whatever." And he always says, "You get what you pay for." You paid $100 for that book, and I promise you, it's worth every penny.
Hmm.
I could give you a book and for $15, and it might not be worth $15, but he knows what he's talking about. Paying a dollar, I mean, in my opinion, paying $1 a page for a book from him probably is cheap. You probably got off cheap on that because the things it's going to teach you and the things, the places it's going to take you personally are worth way more than $100.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when you go into any job, I know when I'm looking at a coach, a teacher, a anybody that I'm looking at, the confidence level they have when they come in stands out for me. Stands out big time. There's a difference, very fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Yeah.
And being an administrator, you have to know which what they are. But the confidence level of knowing I can do the job, knowing I can get those kids where they need to be, always stood out for me. You also can tell right away when you have a conversation with them, are they able to have those human relationships that you know are very, very vital? And do they have that demeanor about themselves? And it's a sixth sense to figure out if they have that or not. If you have the feeling on it, and I'm not gonna lie. There's been times I've been wrong. I mean, I've hired people that I thought would be unbelievable, and they really didn't turn out who I thought they would be. But
Hmm.
I've also hired people that I didn't think would be great, but we needed them at that time, and they turned out to be a rock star. So I was, you mess up, you take a shot here and there, and the ones that you are not 100% positive with, you just give them a lot of that support. You give a lot, you stay behind them, you keep pushing them, and they will get there. They get to be at the point.
Well, Larry, I want to thank you for being on the show and for the insights that you've given us today. I think you've given us a lot to think about, a lot of truths, and that's the big thing is being straight up and honest with people and knowing what it's going to take to succeed. And before we go, I want to just acknowledge you and thank you for what you do and what you've done and what you have taught me. Um, there was a lot of times, even though I was an officer and you were an administrator, that I thought I knew what I was going to do. And after listening to you and what you said, sometimes you changed my mind and decided, there's a different route that I need to go on, different road that I need to do. And to have somebody that has that ability and that insight to look into a person, and I saw how you cared about people, and that was the number one priority, and that's something that I learned from you. Just like 100% accountability, a lot of the principles that I believe in, you emulated. And so I want to thank you for not only your passion but your willingness to be an open book to people, for them to be able to see you and to see you work and to know that you care. It's such a rarity even today to have somebody that has that desire to better people. And I want to thank you for doing that, because a lot of times we give and give and give, but we never hear or receive that confirmation back. So I just want to thank you for all you've done and what you continue to do. It's valuable and it's needed. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and once again, as like going back to what we've talked about in our conversation today, seeing you, knowing who you were, getting to know you as a friend, as a hockey fan, that you and I shared a lot of the passions that we had for hockey, and then being around you and watching you. be an SRO at a job, which is tough because there were lots of times you and I had where you had to be a cop and you had to, you know, do your job. And I think I want to believe that being where you were with the people you were, Todd Riley, myself, and the three of us getting to collaborate on a lot of different situations, made you look at things a little bit different than you're probably trained out of an academy or something. So there's always, to me, there's always something. And you know, I saw things in you. You're an amazing man. And when, like I said, one of my closest friends, I told a friend about you today. We were talking about you, and I said, listen, he's one of my best friends. I said, I don't see him, you know, once every 5 years, 10 years. I said, but he's still somebody. He knows if he needed me tomorrow, I'd be there in a heartbeat. And I said, that's
Exactly.
just that's who it is. And it's something that we saw the very first time together at York Middle School, and we just kept, you know, going right into where we went and had some great times in our lives together. And we've had, there's always been ups and downs, but you know, it is what it is. It's a, that's the world we live in. And no one seeing you, learning from you, learning from Todd, you know, I feel that I was a pretty good administrator, and
Mhm.
I became that being around you guys and learning from you. Because you remember, I was a teacher when we met. I became administrator after we, you know, you helped me get my start, and you know, at Thornton and different things, and Todd helping me, and it was, I really owe you guys a lot.
Uh, it's great to have you on. And I look forward to having you on a future show that we'll come up with and get some more insights from you. So thanks for being here, and look forward to having you back on the show at some time.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Chuck.